Okay, welcome to week 4. So I wanted to do an overview of kind of what we learned so far up to this point in your class. We're learning the Swift programming language, so let's get started with the playground here. And I'm going to make a blank playground. We'll call it, I don't know what we've learned. And so I want to cover some stuff here. I want to cover like some of the basics, and then let's get into some fancy stuff as well. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of all this, give ourselves some space to work, and we're starting from scratch here. So the first thing you learned how to do is to declare a constant. And so to declare a constant, you type the word let, and that's just kind of a Swift way of saying there's this thing and it's not going to change. Let's say it's my social security number, because that doesn't change, right? And I'm just going to type some numbers in here. It's not really my social security number. And you'll also notice that we've declared this thing called social security number, and it's assigned to this number here. You can notice it starts with a lowercase letter, and then you capitalize it as needed. That's called camel case. I'm going to write camel case in camel case because it makes sense. Now, you'll notice that Swift is what's called a type. If you're a programmer, Swift is a type inference kind of a programming language. So you don't have to declare what type this is. It's going to guess what type it is. And if you're ever curious about what type something is, you can hold down on your keyboard, hold down the Alt key, and see how your cursor turns into a question mark if you hover over the thing, the property. Then click on it, and you'll see it's choosing to declare this number an integer, an int, and that's just a type. So whenever there's a colon, the word following it is what type it is. So in this case, it's an int. I could also explicitly say it's an int by typing that out. But you'll notice if I try to say, no, this is actually a string, Swift is going to yell at you because it's not a string. You can't infer that. You can't just do that. If you wanted to make a string, so I'm going to keep this as an int, but if you wanted to make a string, like first name, for instance, equal, you'd use the quotes. So my first name is Dave. Okay. Now, if I want to change my name, however, let's say I'm gonna say, no, my first name was Dave, but now my first name is gonna be Sarah. Then it's gonna yell at you because you can't assign a constant a new value. So you see I said let first name equal Dave. Well, that means that when you say it's let, that means it's permanent. It's not going to change. But if you want it to change, then it'd be a variable. So not a constant, but a variable. And you use the term var. And now all those errors go away. We're cool with that. Now I'm going to leave my name as Dave for this demonstration. But just know that that's the difference between these two properties. These are called properties. And again, I could also write string here if I wanted to, declare specifically that it's a string. And sometimes you want to do that because your code is expecting a certain type. So if you want to explicitly say a type, and you can actually change the type as well. There's ways to force an int to be a double, or force a string into an int if possible. You can kind of like squish those types. You can kind of convert you can convert your code to different types if you force it to do so. Okay, so that's a little bit about constant and variables, and those are types of properties. Okay, so it's just a way of storing data in a nickname or something. And again, Swift uses type inference, so it just kind of guesses what type it's going to be. So let's just keep it simple by doing it like this. And so the next thing you learn is a function, right? And a function is like a block of code that you can execute again and again and again. And it's kind of like, I think of it as like an action or a verb or something. So let's create a function, and to do that you just type func, and then now is the fun part where you can kind of name it whatever you want. So I'm going to name this function, say hello. Okay, and this is how you declare a function. You've got these parentheses after the word you make up, and then you've got this open and close bracket here. Now, if you're running this program, I'm going to click run there, you'll see that it executes these top 2 lines of code over here, but nothing happens here, right? The function isn't executing, it's not working. And the reason is because we didn't call the function. So it's something called calling a function, which means that like we've set up that block of code, but it's not going to actually run until we tell it to. So let's tell it to run. So now it's running, and just to be sure, I'm going to use this print statement inside saying, I'll just put hi, or actually I'll put hello world. Okay, so click play, and you'll see, boom, hello world is printed down here in the console. It's also executed over here in the Swift Playgrounds preview. Okay, so this is how to create a function and how to call a function. Now, what if I want to say hello using my name? So what you could do is you could do something like this: hello world, my name is, and then you use string interpolation, it's called, right? So instead of me actually typing out my name, Dave, like I could just go, I could just go like that, right? Hello, my name is Dave. But then what if I change my name, or what if I want to be called David, or what if there's, you want to always point to this nickname for the data that you're storing. That way, if it changes, you don't have to go and edit a bunch of stuff all over your whole app. It's all pointing to that one little bit of code, that one little stored property, I should say. So instead, I'm going to do this. First name. Hello world, my name is first name. And now when we run it, it should say, hello world, my name is Dave. Okay, that's cool, but a lot of times you're gonna want to use this same bit of code for other people. So let's say I'll just do first name student. I hope you can't hear my chickens out back balking. We have 3 chickens, and I think one of them laid an egg, so it's freaking out. Let's say there's this other person named Sally. So I'll just do first name student Sally. Okay, so I wouldn't want to make this whole. Anytime you're copying and pasting code, it's always kind of like, there might be a better way to do it. So we don't want to have like 2 functions. Like this is the say hello Dave. This is say hello Sally. We want to use this same function for everyone. Right, for multiple people to say hello. So let's get rid of this. We're not going to copy and paste it down there. Instead, we're going to pass a variable in. Okay, so we're going to pass argument in. There's a bunch of different ways to say the same stuff. Basically, whatever you put inside the parentheses is what you're passing into the function. So we're going to pass in a name, and it's of type string. Okay, so there. Now we're passing the name in. And so down here, now it's like, hey, you're missing some information here. I'm going to click, whenever there's like a red circle with a dot in the middle, it usually has a suggestion for you. So I click on this, it opens it up, and I'm going to click fix. And that's going to it's going to help me figure out what's going wrong. And so what it's saying now is, hey, when you call this function, you got to pass that name in. So let's say I'm going to pass my name in here, and then I'm going to put another one down here, and I'm going to use the same function to print out the student's name down here. So now when we click play, it gets down to this point, it triggers this say hello function and passes the name into the function and prints out, hi, my name is Dave. Hello, my name is Dave. Uh-oh. What did we do wrong? Aha. Okay, so here's what we did wrong. Look, see, this is green, and if you're clicking around your code and you click on one property, it'll highlight where it appears elsewhere. And so you'll see it's all referencing this first name up here. So what we wanted to reference is this. So this is what it's called inside of the function. So we want to change this first name to just name. So now it's referencing what we're passing into it. Okay, so now let's run it again. Aha, there we go. Okay, So sometimes you have a block of code and you want to put a bunch of stuff into it, and then you want it to spit out something you want, like in return. So in this case, I'm going to set it up to return a string. So instead of printing the string down here, I want it to return the string. It's done pretty easily. You just, instead of print, you type return. I'm going to give it a space there. And now it's going to return. In fact, I don't think we need these parentheses at all. We're going to do that. So return, and it's going to return this string of text here. Okay. Now when we run it, it'll be interesting. I don't think anything will print down here, right? It's just going to show you some stuff over here. Typically, when you return something out of a function, you want to store it somewhere. And so the way you do that is by declaring another property. So I'm going to say let Dave's hello equals say hello from name. We might look into renaming this because it's getting a little bit confusing that this is my first name. Maybe it should be my first name. My first name. And then I'll make this one your first name. Okay, just to keep it a little bit more clear. And then I'm going to have to change it wherever it appears. So this is going to be my first name, and this is, I'm changing it to your first name there. So now we're storing my hello. Let's make it my hello, and let's also store Sally's hello. So let your hello equal, and so it's not equal to, it's like assigning that string that's returned into this property here. So now what we've got here is we can just print my hello, we can print your hello, and we're good to go. So is everyone good with me up to this point? I wish that you were here and we could just talk about this to make sure that you've got what's going on here. If you get this, and then you get some if-else statements going, then you do pretty well in this class. So essentially we've got properties up here. We're storing some properties in these nicknames that we're calling constants and variables. Variables can change, constants are not changeable. And then we've got a block of code here called a function. It takes in an argument, takes stuff in, spits stuff out by using this little arrow here. And it can spit out ints, strings, doubles, baseballs, whatever type you want. There's these things called types. There's strings and integers and doubles. And essentially the type is just kind of what kind of data is it? Is it a number? Is it a word? Okay, and then down here is where we call the function, and here's where we're storing the return from that function. And down here is actually, print is actually a function of its own. You can tell because it's got parentheses here. And print is a function that just kind of prints something down here to the console. Okay, so we're good up to this point. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to continue with the second video. So if you're comfortable at this point, then you can continue on to the next video. In the next video, we're going to talk about for loops and conditional statements like if-else statements, stuff like that. I don't think we'll get into switches just yet in this early in the semester, but eventually we get into switch statements and other kind of guard statements and more conditional logic. But basically, like, once you get this data, then what do you do with it? How does your app decide, you know, how to proceed? So hopefully that'll help you kind of with an overview of what's going on in the class so far.